The subcommittee will come to order. On the occasion of the first meeting this year of this subcommittee, I want to welcome all of the members of the subcommittee and encourage each member to share with me your ideas for matters that we should place on the subcommittee's agenda. It's my determination that the subcommittee will operate in a completely bipartisan fashion, and I intend to consult colleagues on both sides of the aisle about each matter that the subcommittee will address. So please give me the benefit of what you would like for the subcommittee to achieve and share those suggestions with me over the coming several weeks. The full agenda for the subcommittee is still under construction, but I can announce this morning that the next hearing for the subcommittee will be on March the 12th, during which we will begin our work on universal service reform. And that is a subject on which I hope that we can report legislation to the full committee during the coming months. After the hearing on March the 12th, the pace for having hearings for this subcommittee will accelerate. The subcommittee has a long-standing tradition of bipartisanship, and over 2 decades, I've enjoyed an ongoing partnership across a range of issues with the ranking Republican member of this subcommittee, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns. We've been lead sponsors of privacy legislation in past years, and in this Congress, we may well consider bringing that issue forward again, as well as other matters relating to information technology policy. And so this morning, as I make general opening comments, I want to say that I very much welcome the position of Mr. Stearns as the ranking Republican on this subcommittee, given the long experience in technology-related issues that he brings to this work and to that position. And I very much look forward to our work together, as I do with all members of the subcommittee on both sides of the aisle. Today, the subcommittee takes the first step in reauthorizing the Satellite Home Viewer Act, which sets forth the terms pursuant to which satellite carriers retransmit distant signal broadcast programming. Certain provisions of the Communications and Copyright Acts expire at the end of 2009, making reauthorization of the Home Satellite Viewer Act and that compulsory license must pass legislation during the course of this year. This year marks more than 2 decades since Congress created the Distant Signal Compulsory Copyright License in 1988, and 10 years since it created the Local-into-Local Compulsory License in the 1999 Satellite Home Viewer Improvement Act. Since 1988, direct broadcast satellite has grown to be a robust competitor to cable. Today, nearly 1/3 of all homes subscribing to a multi-channel video programming service choose a DBS provider, and DirecTV and EchoStar are the second and third largest multi-channel video programming service providers in the nation, respectively. This increase in a competitive video programming marketplace would not have been possible had it not been for a series of acts of this Congress, including the 2 licenses to which I previously referred, as well as the program access rules that were adopted in the early 1990s. Let me state at the outset my desire that Congress proceed with the reauthorization before us in the most straightforward manner possible. I do not wish for us to get sidetracked by collateral issues, such as retransmission consent reform, that are relevant to all multi-channel video platforms, not just to satellite platforms. However, there are several matters that I think we cannot avoid discussing in the hearing today and as we continue our work on this reauthorization. One is whether satellite carriers should provide local service in all 210 designated market areas nationwide, as a condition of relying on the Section 122 Local-into-Local Compulsory License. As I mentioned earlier, the Section 122 license was created 10 years ago. At that time, due primarily to the severe capacity constraints that were faced by satellite carriers, in part because spot beam technology had not been, at that time, widely deployed. Congress allowed satellite carriers to roll out local service on a market-by-market basis. Today, most of the country is served with local-into-local service. Today, DirecTV relies on that Section 122 license to offer local service in 150 markets, and EchoStar provides local service in 178 markets. But about 30 markets among the 210 nationwide do not have local-into-local coverage at all. Most of the DMAs that lack local-into-local service are in rural areas, such as the congressional district that I represent. And in fact, constituents in one of the 4 DMAs that comprise my congressional district still cannot get their local stations by way of satellite, a fact with which I am reacquainted on a regular basis, as constituents in that area complain to me vocally whenever I'm in that region about their inability to get local signals delivered by satellite. While I understand that the numbers of subscribers in these areas are small, these households, which often cannot receive local signals over the air because the DMAs in which they reside are large, or because of terrain issues, many of these regions are also mountainous. These individuals are very vocal in their desire to receive the opportunities that those in more densely populated portions of the nation presently have. Another matter for discussion is whether residents in one DMA should be able to receive broadcast programming from an adjacent DMA. DMAs in 45 states straddle state lines, which means that residents in one state are assigned to a DMA that is primarily located in a neighboring state. For many, in that kind of situation, the local news, sports, and public safety information they receive from the stations in their designated DMA actually derive from another state and or are more concentrated on events that occur in that other state. And so one possible arrangement might be to allow for the provision of adjacent market signals in those situations, with the people in the state that has a minority of the viewers in that straddled situation being able to subscribe to the adjacent market signals of the adjacent market within the state in which those individuals live. In past years, the law has been modified to allow adjacent market signal transmission in certain specified markets. Today, we begin a discussion about the potential for enacting a general rule on adjacent market signals for situations where the DMAs straddle state lines, about 45 markets in total across the country. The Energy and Commerce Committee and the House Judiciary Committee share jurisdiction over the Home Satellite Viewer Act, and as a member of both of those committees, it's my desire that the subcommittees work closely together and create a common text, which both committees can then process. In fact, the Judiciary Committee has its first hearing tomorrow morning on this subject, and we are already in discussions, senior staff to senior staff, about the kinds of coordination we can achieve in the work between these two committees. I want to welcome our witnesses this morning, and I want to thank each of them for taking the time to share their thoughtful comments with us. The prepared testimony is excellent. We appreciate your providing that, and after we've had an opportunity for other members to make their statements, we will turn to your testimony. In accordance with the rules of the committee, any member who decides to waive an opening statement will have 2 minutes added to the time that member can propound questions to our witnesses this morning. It's my pleasure now to recognize the ranking Republican member of our subcommittee, about whom I've already made some welcoming remarks, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. Obviously, we're all excited. Let me congratulate you on becoming the new chairman of this very important committee. It's, as you pointed out, has had a long history of bipartisanship, so I look forward to working with you You have the capability, you have the interest and the passion for telecommunications and Internet. So you and I have worked together on other things, and so I look forward to this great opportunity to work again with you on this important committee. Obviously, we live in exciting times. Advances in broadband technology, healthcare, and how we produce and distribute electricity will spur long-term economic growth, increase international competitiveness, and improve the quality of life for all of Americans. Frankly, we are only limited by our imagination. The topic of today's hearing, the Satellite Home Viewers Act, simply allows satellite companies to deliver broadcast television signals. The Act should be updated and made more consumer-friendly. Its antiquated provisions are frustrating television viewers. At a minimum, we should revise the law to reflect the end of analog broadcasting, as well as to allow willing satellite operators and broadcasters to offer in-state signals to households whose local markets include only out-of-state stations. We should resist calls to expand the carry-one, carry-all requirements governing satellite delivery of local broadcast stations. Doing so would not only be bad policy, it would be unconstitutional. My colleagues, over the past 20 years, technology has progressed beyond what most of us have ever or could imagine. 20 years ago, the Internet was used as a mere fraction of what it is today. There are other signs of how much things have changed. For example, let me just give you this little statistic. In the United States today, more people earn their living on eBay than are employed by the entire steel industry. Furthermore, in 1989, all of us remember the Tandy 5000. It was billed as the most powerful computer ever built. It had lightning-fast 20 megahertz processor and a whopping 2 megabytes of RAM. All of this cutting-edge technology cost you almost $9,000. Monitor and mouse were not included. Now, if you take and make that in today's dollars, that would be equivalent to $15,000. So we have seen how things have changed so dramatically. This brings us to the subject of today's hearing. I'm looking forward to this committee moving forward on the Satellite Home Viewer Act reauthorization. This act has served multiple times to advance competition and, frankly, to give consumers more choices. I anticipate exploring market-based avenues for satellite providers to continue adding even more local stations, because all of us know local content is essential and the customers desire it. I would add, though, I'm concerned about some interest in requirements that satellite TV providers serve all 210 media markets. Now, such initiative not only challenges the laws of physics, but also challenges how one is able to go to the capital and credit markets to achieve and accomplish this goal. A better approach, I believe, is to make smaller markets more attractive by allowing them to be carried as an adjacent local market in addition to the market that Nielsen determines that you live in. That's a rational way to incentivize more carriage, and one that doesn't even go as far as the Internet distribution model that the broadcast networks are already presently implementing. The video marketplace has never been more competitive. In the past, cable was the only pay TV option. 15 years ago, cable had 95% of the pay TV market. Now that share has dropped to 68%. More than 32 million consumers now subscribe to a service other than cable. After Comcast, the second and third largest pay TV providers are DirecTV and Dish Network. Phone companies are aggressively stealing subscribers with their video offerings. In fact, both AT&T and Verizon would rank in the top 10 of largest pay TV providers today. Furthermore, local and national programmers alike are offering content to consumers over the Internet, either on websites for free or simply through services such as iTunes. So as you can see, Mr. Chairman, consumers have a number of choices, and this competition will lead to new products and to new, better services. We no longer have the justification to deny America's households access to the programming of their choice, subject only to free market negotiations by distributors and the content owners. Indeed, we should be reducing video regulation in this competitive environment, not increasing it. We need to innovate and not regulate. So I look forward to the hearing, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward again with working with you on these important matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stearns. The gentleman from California, Mr. Waxman, Chairman of the Full Energy and Commerce Committee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing marks the first step of the 111th Congress towards its required reauthorization of the Satellite Home Viewer Extension and Reauthorization Act, known as SHVIRA. Today is also the first hearing of this newly constituted subcommittee on communications, technology, and the Internet. The subcommittee has a new name, a new chairman, and some new members, and I'd like to congratulate Mr. Boucher on his chairmanship and welcome the new members to the subcommittee. Mr. Boucher has a long history on this subcommittee and an exceptional command of telecommunications issues, and I look forward to working closely with him and Ranking Member Cliff Stearns and relying on their expertise as we consider this reauthorization. SHVIRA is a complicated bill. It grew out of competing policy goals, promoting competition for pay television service and protecting our nationwide system of free over-the-air broadcast television. Achieving these competing goals, especially during a time of dramatic change in the communications marketplace, requires a careful balancing of interests. And the panel before us today represents a diverse group of stakeholders, so we're all anxious to hear their testimony, and we very much appreciate their participation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to say a few remarks and to express my desire to work with you and other members of this committee as we fashion this legislation.
Thank you very much, Chairman Waxman, and I appreciate your kind words and look forward very much to working with you as well. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too am excited about your chairmanship of this committee. And let me just say, if you can have some hearings in regular order, you may be able to set the example for the rest of this Congress. So I'm applauding your attempt to do that. Let me also report on the digital transition. Many of my broadcasters have turned off their analog signal, which I applaud, and we've heard very few complaints. In fact, I think my D.C. office got one call. I know one broadcaster may have had 40 calls, and that was just to set the scan button on the digital receiver. So I'm very excited to report that. Yesterday I was on a major St. Louis morning talk show, and the host there, a guy named McGraw-Milhaven, and I've had a 10-year relationship. And it started with the debate of Shiva, which he was really a late-night guy, I think 1 in the morning, and had followed local and the local debate, was pleased with our passage, saw the benefits, and we've been friends ever since. So I mentioned it to him yesterday that I was going back to Washington to start the debate on reauthorization. Which brings me to the aspect of reauthorization. We know it ties in with the digital transition and analog. There has to be some changes because of that technology, but I would also just caution us that we be careful not to harm the multiple options that consumers have today. It is truly a phenomenon of all the availability to view and compete and receive signals from a multitude of an area. It's very important in my congressional district that we have the local and the local for the public safety debate. But again, I would just caution is that we move diligently, and with your promise to have hearings and move through regular order, I think that's the way in which we address the minute details of bills which could be very, very harmful. I thank you, and I yield back my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shimkus. The gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshoo, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, my congratulations to you on assuming the chairmanship and the gavel of this really wonderful and important subcommittee. I've always enjoyed your insights, and I respect them relative to technology and telecommunications issues, and I look forward to working with you and all of my colleagues on the subcommittee. I'm very pleased that we're starting out the discussion of this reauthorization early so that we can flesh out all the issues surrounding it. The week before last, many members were visited by their local public television stations. They expressed their concern that access to local public television stations' digital programming is denied to almost half of all direct broadcast satellite households. That's nearly 12 million households in our country, because one major DBS provider has failed to negotiate a long-term deal with public television. I'm reintroducing legislation in this Congress, as I did in the last, the Satellite Consumers Access to Public Television Digital Programming Act, it's a mouthful, to require DBS carriage of all public television stations, multicast digital stations. I'm very pleased that DirecTV, the Association for Public Television Stations, and PBS announced that they reached an agreement whereby DirecTV would carry public television stations' digital signals. I think it's unacceptable for any household to be denied access to public television's digital programming. So I'm looking forward to questioning the witnesses, certainly Dish Network, and I appreciate meeting Mr. Ergin this morning. I think the bill would be unnecessary if they would just come to a similar agreement as their competitor. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, again, and congratulations, and look forward to a very full 111th Congress where we will really distinguish ourselves on behalf of our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eshoo. The ranking Republican member of the full Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I won't take too long. I appreciate you doing this hearing. I think we do need to reauthorize the satellite home viewer extension and reauthorization legislation, and I think this may be an issue that we can work together on. So I'm supportive and look forward to hearing from the witnesses.
All happy thoughts.
Good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barton. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Stupak, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations being chairman of this committee. I want to waive my time and use it for questioning.
The gentleman from Michigan waives his opening statement. The gentlelady from Colorado, Ms. DeGette, is recognized for 2 minutes. She's not here, is she? The gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Christensen, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll waive my opening statement.
Ms. Christensen waives her opening statement. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Space, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I represent the 18th Congressional District in Ohio, a district that spans 16 counties and covers almost a fifth of the state's geographic area. This district is composed of small towns and villages in rural areas and lies in the hills of Appalachia. Our largest town and throughout the district is Zanesville, Ohio, with about 25,000 people. And perhaps of most interest pertaining to today's hearing, Ohio's 18th Congressional District encompasses 5 designated market areas. The Columbus market covers the majority of our counties, but in the north we pick up Cleveland and Akron. To the south, 2 of my counties are actually part of the Charleston, Huntington, West Virginia market. In the east, 2 more of my counties are in the Wheeling, Steubenville market, and finally Muskingum County is the sole county comprising the Zanesville market. This scenario makes the reauthorization of the Satellite Home Viewer Act of particular relevance to me and my constituents. I'm looking forward to working with the subcommittee to address the complicated issues, many of which you mentioned in your opening statement, Mr. Chairman, that we'll be talking about further today, and specifically the local into local component of the legislation, as the Wheeling Steubenville market is one of a few dozen, I think 30, DMAs without local into local service. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Space. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Deal, is recognized. I'm sorry. The gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Walden, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your having this hearing. I'll apologize up front. We also have an energy hearing going on at the same time, so I'm going to have to bounce back and forth. At the outset, Mr. Chairman, I'd like unanimous consent to insert into the record a opening statement from our colleague from Wyoming, Ms. Lummis.
Without objection.
that she would like in there regarding satellite issues. And I would concur with my colleague from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus. Two of the markets that serve my district also converted to digital, although one station in each market remained analog because of their corporate ownership decisions. We didn't have a single phone call in my office about that conversion, and yes, we are listed in the phone book. The managers of the stations whom I spoke to repeatedly, in fact, I was in one of the markets when it occurred, they had a couple hundred phone calls. Predominantly, it was about plugging in the box, rescanning the channels, and that was it. And so I hope in the very near future, Mr. Chairman, we might have an oversight hearing on this issue, because I'm not convinced that we need to spend $90 million on community organizers and another $650 million on converter boxes. It appears in markets where the conversion's taken place, it's done so rather seamlessly and with little problem. In terms of this legislation, I look forward to working with you on the reauthorization of the Satellite Home Viewer Act. I know that I'm not alone in concern out in the country about the local into local issue. It seems like when you represent a rural district with rural communities, you're always sort of the last one considered. And I've got areas, for example, in Bend, Oregon, that still have not been able to get local into local. And this is not a subject that's you all are unaware of, certainly, but it's one that I feel pretty strongly about. And so I hope you'll be able to address that in your comments or at some point in this legislation, because it seems to me whether you live in New York or Bend, Oregon or Medford, Oregon, when it comes to federal law, you ought to be treated the same. And so, Mr. Chairman, look forward to working with you on this, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walden. The gentlelady from Colorado, Ms. DeGette, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll waive my opening statement in favor of extra time during questions, but I do want to mention that underscoring the fact that Colorado is ground zero for telecommunications, I have two constituents on this panel who I would like to welcome. Charlie Ergen, who will be testifying for Dish Network, and Wick Rowland, who will be testifying on behalf of Public TV. He's the CEO of Colorado Public Television. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to both of our witnesses.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeGette. 2 minutes will be added to your questioning time. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Melanson, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd wish to waive my opening statement.
Mr. Melanson waives his opening statement. The gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll waive.
Ms. Castor waives her opening statement. The gentlelady from California, Ms. Matsui, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also would like to congratulate you on assuming this chairmanship of this wonderful committee. I look forward to working with you. I would also like to thank today's panelists for sharing their expertise on this very complex issue. We're here today to begin the process to reauthorize the Satellite Home Viewer Extension and Reauthorization Act, which is set to expire on December 31st at the end of this year. In the past, Congress has tried to ensure that as many households as possible have access to local television programming while expanding competition and consumer choice in programming and service providers. As we move forward, we should continue to advance these principles. In today's marketplace, we should encourage carriers to provide local television stations and news broadcasts to more and more customers. It is particularly important that consumers have access to local emergency broadcasts. Unfortunately, California is home to many natural disasters, such as earthquakes, flooding, and wildfires. Consumers need access to local emergency information when such events occur. I look forward to hearing from each of today's witnesses about how we can advance solutions that are effective and efficient. Thank you again for your leadership on this issue, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Matsui. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Deal, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, and I add my congratulations to you on your chairmanship, and I also welcome the witnesses and thank them for their attendance today. Glad we're considering the reauthorization of the Satellite Home Viewers Act because it brings into focus one of the issues that's concerned me for a very long time, and that is the lack of true consumer choice in television viewing. As we all know, because DMAs, designated market areas, cut across state lines, hundreds of thousands of television households have little or no access to broadcast TV stations from their own state, and therefore have very limited access to their state news, elections, government, and weather programming. And likewise, individuals who may live across a state or a DMA line, but are part of a community on the other side of the line, cannot receive the programming that matters to them. And as we've heard already today in these opening statements, this is a common concern that many of my colleagues share. Now, I understand the reasoning behind the drawing of the DMA maps, but it seems to me to be an archaic system. Depending on who you ask, broadcast TV viewers make up around 10 to 15% of the total viewing audience. It seems odd that the other 85 to 90% of the television viewing audience is constrained by a system that is based on the viewing habits of a fraction of that 15%. Now, I understand the desire of broadcasters to control the distribution of their programming, but it seems rather absurd to me that in this day and age that consumers who are willing to pay are still prevented from watching the content that they desire. The free market has allowed technology to meet consumer demand for content in many ways outside of the world of cable, satellite, and broadcast TV. We should strive to foster a framework that allows the free market to meet consumer demands in an equally efficient way for television viewers, and I hope that this hearing will be a step in that direction. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deal. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Weiner, is recognized for 2 minutes.
I'll waive my opening statement and accept all for my congratulations to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiner, and we certainly welcome you as the new vice chairman of this subcommittee as well. The gentleman from California, Mr. McNary, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to offer my congratulations for assuming the chairmanship of this exciting committee. As a person with a technical background, I'm looking forward to learning about this issue from experts such as yourselves. This is exciting, it's a dynamic, and it's a critically important area. So I'm looking forward to contributing to our national policy in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McNary. The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. And frankly, I want to start off by saying congratulations, and I'm pleased that you're our chairman. And you have a depth of knowledge and a universal respect within the telecom community. So I really appreciate you accepting that role. Digital conversion, I want to hear from you how that's going to impact or whether there should be policies we need to incorporate in this reauthorization. Like Mr. Shimkus, I had 2 stations out of 5 that converted on the 17th. Between station calls and then Nebraska set up our 211 to receive calls, there's something around 550 calls. Like Mr. Shimkus mentioned, probably well over 50% was helping people with their setup in the sense of learning how to scroll through or setting up the, I'm just drawing a blank on the word right now, but easily resolved. And frankly, only about 10 were calls about, I don't have a box and I don't have a coupon. What we did is pooled coupons before, so every one of those people received a coupon in a box that same day. So we were able to resolve every issue on the conversion. But I also, as I mentioned, want to hear how it impacts, especially at the digital signal, and if there's still problems with the local broadcasters, or is that being resolved with local into local. And look forward to your testimony, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Terry. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Ross, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Boucher, for holding this hearing and for allowing me, as a member of the full committee, but not this subcommittee, to be here and to participate and to raise an issue that is extremely important to so many of our constituents. Across our nation, many satellite and cable subscribers cannot receive the local channels of their home state because the current law specifies that stations be transmitted primarily within their designated market area, or DMA. However, these boundaries assigned by the Nielsen Media Research Company were designated 50 years ago And many of these DMA boundaries, up to 47% by some estimates, cross state lines. This leaves millions of subscribers watching the local news, weather, and sports of their neighboring state and missing vital weather information and other information about the state in which they live, work, and may I add, pay taxes. We are essentially using 1950 laws to deliver 21st century technology. In the 110th Congress, I introduced legislation to remedy this problem, and I am currently drafting new legislation that will update our law and bring it into the 21st century by giving consumers access to their local channels. But let me be clear, I am not proposing to change the DMAs. I simply want to allow those who are receiving the local channels of a neighboring state the choice to also receive local channels from their home state. Satellite and cable subscribers should not be denied the freedom to choose stations from their home state simply because of an outdated law, and I am hopeful that we can work together to provide all subscribers more choice and greater local content. I am also hopeful that the witnesses today will specifically address this issue in their comments, and I look forward to working with the committee and you, Mr. Chairman, to remedy this problem in this year's reauthorization. Thank you again for allowing me to be here, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ross. The gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I add my congratulations to you. I want to welcome our panelists and the return of some of our panelists who are here to talk with us today on the issues that we've got in front of us. We've heard some of the problems that we have existing with accessing local programming, so I'll submit my full statement. Just add a couple of comments on this. In Tennessee, my constituents in the metropolitan areas are well served. There is no problem with accessing and having choices and expanded service. And Mr. Foray, I like the way you illustratively pointed that out in your written testimony, and we thank you for that. Let me mention, though, as some of my colleagues have, in our rural and underserved areas, I've got 2 counties, Hardin and Henderson counties, and there the citizens cannot receive the subscription video service from traditional cable programmers, and they're limited to a weak or non-existent broadcast signal as we are making the digital switch. But, you know, the DBS, the satellite service providers, they're the only game in town for some, and they don't extend the local programming option for a variety of factors, whether it is policy or market-driven factors. But this is something that we are going to need to address. These constituents of ours are frustrated. We understand this. I share that frustration with them. I also see it as an issue of safety, and this is one that I don't think my colleagues have raised yet today, so I will. We had a tornado last year, 30 dead, 150 that were injured. We know that local programming is important. We want to work with you as we look at reauthorization and see how we best address this issue. It is one of convenience and enjoyment, but it is also one of safety. So we do want to hear from you on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blackburn. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, former chairman of this subcommittee, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am chairing a hearing on energy upstairs as the former chairman of the Energy Subcommittee. A decade ago, Mr. Chairman, I successfully offered the local-to-local amendment that made it possible for direct broadcast satellite companies to offer consumers their local broadcast channels as part of a seamless satellite video service offering. This new legal ability dramatically increased the competitive prospects for the DBS companies against incumbent cable operators. The rise in subscribership to satellite service in urban and suburban America as a result of my local-to-local amendment had another beneficial consequence. It induced cable operators to invest heavily in greater bandwidth for additional channel capacity, enhanced picture quality, and to offer broadband and voice services in a headlong effort to distinguish its services in competition with DBS satellite. The point is that even if consumers stuck with their local friendly cable operator, such consumers have also benefited from the satellite competition this subcommittee fostered. In previous legislative consideration of these issues, questions have been raised about out-of-market signal carriage of broadcast signals, as well as the applicability of syndicated exclusivity, sports blackout, and network non-duplication rules that were adopted originally decades ago to protect the interests of free over-the-air broadcasters and the viability of their services. As the march of digital technology moves inexorably forward, it is appropriate to once again examine all of these issues so that our laws and regulations not only keep pace with changes in technology, but so that we may reassert policy support for the long-held communications values of localism and diversity in a manner that embraces competition and innovation. The consumer ultimately should be the beneficiary of the policies we advance. I want to commend you, Chairman Boucher, for calling this important hearing this morning and the excellent panel of witnesses that I see down here. It's like Hall of Fame weekend as I look down. Mr. Ergen, Mr. Franks, Mr. Gabrielli, all of them who have helped us so much over the years in framing our policy. I yield back to balance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Markey. The gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Murphy, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to the testimony, and I will submit my statement for the record.
Okay. The gentleman waives his opening statement. The Chair asks unanimous consent for 2 matters. First, that a written statement prepared by National Programming Service, which distributes distant network signals to the subscribers of the DISH network, be submitted for the record. Without objection, so ordered, and also that all members of this subcommittee may submit their prepared written statements for the record, and without objection, so ordered.